The answer is yes. Zack Snyder sucks. He's the worst director of all time. The episode could end right now. It's unbelievable to see this guy get worse as he goes on. Yet every time people go see it, it doesn't make sense. But then not a whole lot of stuff does. But of course, we've got the round table joining me. We're going to start with the man. This guy loves cinema so much. This guy loves BJ so much that on his most recent episode, he did a film about getting BJs. It was called Caligula. Christian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Husey. Yeah, Lemmi joined me on that episode, and we like to call Caligula a fun family romp. It's great to watch out in the backyard on a nice summer evening. So project it on the nearest wall and invite the neighbors, invite the kids. And by the way, we just started 2 minutes ago, and we're only $300 away from our goal for today. So everybody just keep super chatting.
There we go. And of course, speaking of that episode, the last time I seen a set of jugs that big down south, there was two hillbillies blowing into them. Lemmi owns those jugs. Lemmi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm a little tipsy and angry that I had to watch 8 Zack Snyder movies.
We'll just wait for the director's cuts. And speaking of words with CUT in them, we have got the lovely and talented Cayley. Cayley, how are you doing today?
I feel very similar to Lemmi, drunk and angry.
Well, I guess it's not all so bad when one of your mortal nemesis has just been arrested for drugs.
Yeah, that helped.
We might as well start off with the obvious one, which would be his debut, and I will annoy Cayley with my opinions on this one. Dawn of the Dead. I'll start with this one with an annoying opinion. This is the greatest horror remake ever made. I fucking loved this when it came out. So much so to the point that it's kind of like staying friends with an ex that's lost her looks. And you kind of keep in contact because you always think, oh, maybe she'll get back to being that way she used to be. But then it turned out that her name is Night Melendez. I love the fact that they sort of did the Aliens type remake of a horror. If you're going to remake it, you might as well really go for it. And I went as far as to buy it on DVD. Remember those kids 20 years ago? How much does that make you feel old? This film's 20 years old. And even on the DVD, it's full of short films to sort of fill in the backstory. I thought it was brilliant. The soundtrack, it's kind of embarrassing. But that's my take on Dawn of the Dead. Cayley, I annoyed you already. What did you think of Dawn of the Dead?
Well, I first of all would disagree with you about the soundtrack. I think that the inclusion of Richard Cheese's Down with the Sickness is just lovely in this. But I think it's fine. It is definitely not the best horror remake. It feels like a comedy film, but without the oomph. It's fine. It's kind of how I feel about this one. I do like the zombie baby stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that that's neat, but I also don't understand the point of any of it because babies don't have teeth. So that's like the least scary zombie of all time because it can't even bite you. Like, what's it going to do? And I also really feel like the third act of this movie doesn't fit with the rest of it. I think if we had continued down kind of the first 2/3 of the film, that path, I think this could have been really successful. And I think it was a great debut for Zack Snyder. I think that I had a lot of high hope for him as a director after seeing this.
Yeah, it's because of this that every time he has something new out, I'll check it out just in case. Lemmi, you are so ready for trouble. I can see it in your eyes. What is your take of the Dawn of the Dead?
It was one of the 3 Zack Snyder movies that I actually really, really enjoyed watching, as opposed to like just feeling like I'm forced to watch it for homework. But I remember watching it when it first came out, and I agree with Cayley about the soundtrack being great. I loved the Richard Cheese Down with the Sickness was on every single burned CD I ever made. So Yeah, I loved the movie. It kind of set the bar for zombie movies for me. Unless it was blatantly a comedic zombie movie, Dawn of the Dead was just the bar for zombie movies. I really didn't enjoy any other zombie movies because it was just kind of a perfect zombie movie.
And I always thought it was crazy that I think it was in the same year that Zack Snyder made a better zombie film than fucking George A. Romero with his own Land of the Dead, which was unbelievably shit.
I agree.
Yeah. Christian, what is your take of Dawn of the Dead?
Well, I hate to disagree with the panel, but first and foremost, I hate zombie movies. Zombies as an adversary are just so boring, and I hate watching them overwhelm our heroes in just hordes, and yet when necessary, you can shoot them all in the head. And I did not see this movie when it first came out because I, again, hate zombie movies. But watching it more recently, you're like, oh, Zack Snyder on a script from James Gunn. This should be amazing. It's not. It's basically like a made-for-cable movie, but it's really because I hate the genre. I think that there's definitely some interesting filmmaking choices, but it's sadly, even though I don't like the genre and I don't like the film, it is one of his better movies, probably because of the runtime.
I love the how on the nose his soundtrack is, where during the bit where the nurse is having a nice day, they play the song "Have a Nice Day," which must have taken forever to come up with. And then once the virus is spreading, they play "Down with the Sickness." Like this is a talent that doesn't come along every once in a while, right, Lem?
Right.
Usually, you know, a lot of Americans. You do understand that we wouldn't know she's having a nice day if there wasn't a song that was telling us. And we might have eventually caught on that the virus was spreading, that the sickness was spreading. But I think we just needed a little boost. We needed a little push over the wall.
Gotta make it fun.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And of course, thankfully, the lead was a female, or else wouldn't catch me watching. Right, guys? Okay.
I would call it watchable but pointless.
It's one of his better movies, even though I don't like it.
We now come to a film that will also be the title of the Aaron Imholt biopic of him trying to hit his daily goal, 300. Thank you, Lemmi. What did you think of 300, Lemmi?
I loved it when it first came out. Like, I thought it was so awesome and dramatic, and like, I love historical films. And back then, I absolutely loved the slow-mo shots. Like the slow-mo shot of that guy's hand getting cut off. And somebody could have painted me a picture of that and I would have put a mural on my wall of that shot. But having to sit there and watch like 8 or 9 of these movies in a row, the slow-mo really just pissed me off at this point in my adulthood, I think. But the movie itself was great. I found out that movie only took 60 days to film. So yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. Great.
And 45 days to watch, Lemmi.
Yeah.
And 2 hours to write. Christian, what did you think of 300?
Well, remembering it in those salad years of 2007, I remember thinking it was great, and I think that this is the movie that really, I think, made him and made studios think, yeah, let's give him a bunch of money and not really try to step on his creativity and runtime, which would really come back to bite Warner Brothers. But I think that that a movie's great when you can think of like, oh yeah, there was really a lot of sort of, like Troy and all the ripoffs that came up after the fact, the ripoffs. I mean, just like, oh yeah, let's do those epic sort of tales, these. So I think that this is one of his better works, but I don't know. I think that in that moment, I felt like it was great. So this might be his best movie, but is it his most rewatchable? I don't know.
Cayley, what was your take on 300?
I definitely agree with Lemmy and Christian here. It's an easy to view action movie because it was visually beautiful and highly saturated colors. And again, we hadn't gotten bored of the slow-mo yet, and also of him playing with depth of field. So when this came out, it felt really exciting to watch this action film in this way. And I thought that they did a really good job of, kind of basing it on Frank Miller's graphic novel. I think a lot of the action was done with green screens, and that ended up functioning really well for this movie. I think that it set up the precedent, like exactly what Christian was saying, that Zack Snyder is kind of allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants. And it turns out he shot his load on 300, and everything else has just been slow-mo, depth of field, visually beautiful, but no content at all.
Well, I thought the 300 was the cinema equivalent of smoking in a school playground when you're a teenager. Everybody else is telling you, yeah, try it, it's good, and you go see 300, and I fucking hated it. I remember seeing the trailer and thinking, wow, this looks visually incredible, with stuff like the soldiers being pushed off the cliff and all this shit, and you think this is going to be so good in its finished edited form. But no, that was actually it. This is the film that made me realize Zack Snyder is the person that should be hired to make trailers for films, not direct them. And on top of it, in the previous 2 episodes that we did on Tarantino and James Cameron, we spoke about how Tarantino has a foot fetish. James Cameron likely has a water fetish. So likes to get piss in his face. 300 was the start of a very weird thing in Zack Snyder films that has women being or sexually abused for no logical story reason. Where there was a bit in it where the lady offers to sleep with the guy for help. So even though she willingly offers to sleep with him, he her. And it's like, that's extremely strange. She probably would have let him take her up the arsehole anyway. Right, Lemmy?
Right.
Yeah. And I just thought that 300 was embarrassingly shit. And the only thing that sort of saved it was that they did a sequel to it about 5 years later that was even worse, that was so bad that it could have been... There was a cinema spoof called Meet the Spartans, which was a parody of Meet the Parents and fucking 300. And it was actually better than 302. I hated 300. By the way, Lemmy, 300 and you owe me 271. Is it? No? Fuck. Up next in the Zack Snyder verse is a film titled after something that April Imholt had to do to battle off prison attacks. SuckerPunch.
What you're gonna? This is usually the part where I come in and say you're just gonna jump over Watchmen and the animated owl movie.
I thought they came first.
Well, according to the list I have, Sucker Punch is 2011, Watchmen's 2009. So if I have a bad list, then that's on me for being a bad guest.
Hang on, I'll just do a quick check on the porn sites.
If I didn't have to watch The Watchmen, I'm gonna be even more upset. I expected great things from The Watchmen, if I'm being honest, because everybody was like, you would fucking love The Watchmen. I watched it and I was like, this movie sucks.
That's when you realize that your friends don't actually know you.
You're right, it was The Watchmen. Fuck. Anyway, let me see as we're on The Watchmen, which I flawlessly segued into from 300. What did you think of The Watchmen?
I didn't like that they unmasked him. I hated that. I hated that so much with my whole life. I wanted to love that movie. I love the whole Rorschach fucking gimmick of the mask and the changing of the stuff. But the story and the voices of it, do you remember Christian Bale Batman? Everybody was like real pissed off that it was talking like this. I had that same vibe the entire movie. I'm like, I I'm over this. I wish people knew me a little bit better, and I hope it's not a topic on this podcast.
I love how drunk she is. Cayley, what did you think of Watchmen?
I think that the best way to describe Watchmen is that, like, some of the most famous and wonderful directors have said that the comic was not filmable. So, like, Terry Gilliam famously was like, you can't make that into a movie. Don't even try. Nobody try. And then Zack Snyder, high off his 300 bullshit, was like, well, I can fucking do it. It's going to be really great. And I'm going to do an awesome job. And the goal, I think, was to be faithful to comic. I know almost nothing about comic books, but I do know that a lot of the symbolism of Watchmen as a comic book is that it's supposed to be about, like, the morality of murder. And if superheroes are motivated by extremities, can that potentially be a dangerous thing? And Watchmen, the movie, Zack Snyder just ignores all of that. And he's like, let's focus on these broken bones. It's going to be fucking great, everybody. It, like, revels in the fight scenes. And that is exactly the opposite of what I believe the intent of the comic is. So don't try to be faithful to it if you're going to completely change the symbolism.
Mm-hmm. Christian, what did you think of Watchmen, which is what Nick Rekieta had to do in the showers recently? Thank you.
Well, it's also one of my favorite pastimes, Watchmen. But Husey, this might surprise you, but I'm a bit of a nerd. So I was very much familiar with Watchmen heading into this film, and I do think it's not a great adaptation. Terry Gilliam is correct. That story wouldn't translate well to the screen. I do think that this was entertaining when I saw it. Visually, superheroes hadn't really looked like this before. Even though I don't think that this is a great film, this is his best superhero movie. And I think some of the casting, it goes a long way, but the characters, I think, do come off the page really well. And I mean, we're going to just brush past Dr. Manhattan's giant blue dong. I mean, that gets 2 dongs up for me, the movie, just because of the blue dong.
Not Lemmi, the blue dong from Caligula, the BLEW dong. He means BLUE.
Correct. The color,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To me, this should have been called Watchmen: Dawn of the Dude Bros. Thank you, Lemmi. This film is what I would call an iTunes Dude Bros script meeting, where he was clearly having a couple of Steve Weisers. Oh, hell yeah. And going through his iTunes and going, I love that song. That song's great. This song's great. And he picked, 10, 15 songs that were totally Dude Bro-tastic. And they're crowbarred into this, whatever his next film would be, just so happened to be The Watchmen, which also had another woman being beaten and attempted at the start of it, who then, within the story, ended up going on a date with the guy and getting pregnant by him anyway, after he attempted the you-know-water right up both holes. And I thought, even more bizarrely, and here's where I'm going to start ranting, the Imholt is kicking in. One of my favorite bands, the Smashing Pumpkins, did a song called "The End Is the Beginning Is the End" for Batman and Robin, everybody's favorite one of the series. For some reason, Zack Snyder used a remix version of that song for the trailer for The Watchmen, which I thought really set it off on the bad. I think it's pronounced resident. I'm kidding with you. I don't know either word anyway. And I just thought, this is fucking terrible. It was way too long. It was all style over substance. And the fact that when this came out, it was a big financial failure, yet they still went on to hire him again and again and again with these bigger budgets, which makes you kind of believe the rumor that they control Hollywood. And I mean, Dude Bros.
It is a very dude, bro. I think one of the only things missing would be Nickelback. And by the way, you're talking about the attempted sexual assault and subsequent date and impregnation. In America, 2024, we call that a meet cute. So maybe it doesn't translate across the pond properly.
Yeah, I heard that in India it was released as a romantic comedy. I know you all want to talk about oil films, and I know Cayley's all like, "Oh, can we talk about an oil spin-off podcast?" But let's just stick to one here. My personal favorite oil film that I've seen recently, and yours, don't lie, Legend of the Guardians: The Isles of Gahul. Cayley, few people have been excited to talk about a film as much as this. I know you're a huge oil action fan. You can't stop talking about them, tweeting or finding all this stuff. Oh, oils, oils, oils. What was your opinion of this Oscar-winning classic?
Unfortunately, I have not seen it. I believe there's only one owl movie that I have seen, and it was Stage Fright. I know. I'm missing out. I'll stop everything.
Considering how wet Cayley's chair usually is during scenes with Owl in Winnie the Pooh films,
Yes.
I'm shocked that you haven't seen this. There's so much owl on owl action in this movie.
I'm really missing out.
And even better, it was animated for IMAX cinemas with 3D CGI. So not only do you get to see an oil film, you get to see it in 3D. What else where could you ever see an oil in 3D? You never could. Lemmi, what did you think of the oil film?
I also didn't watch it, which is weird because the common theme that I kept throughout watching all of these movies was like, these are made for kids. All of these movies are made for like fucking 12 to 15-year-old boys or girls or whatever the fuck. You know, it's like an intro to action movies or something or other. And every movie I was sitting here thinking, I was like, man, he'd make a really good like animated film. And that's the only one I didn't watch.
Well, to Lemmy's point, there is no difference between boys and girls in 2024, so it is hard to know the distinction. I actually saw this movie when it was out. I remember it very well. My wife is in show business, so we get
we get it. You're not
Yeah. Well, look, Husey, I haven't said that. I just said I had a wife. We can go on from there.
Nice.
But, and I remember watching it while wrapping Christmas presents that year. So I guess it would have been Christmas 2010. And I remember enjoying it and thinking like, oh, this is a great movie for children. And no one ever talked about it again until right now. This is the second time that it's ever come up in my life. And I think that I don't know. I think his style probably works better in animation because it's supposed to be cartoony instead of the live action cartoons that he usually makes. So I think that this is one of those movies where his vision was actually realized. I can't imagine showing this to my kids, but I think that this is not the eyesore on his filmography that it could have been.
Yes, it is. By the way, Zack Snyder film idea, wrapping Christmas presents. Snoop Dogg gets sent to the North Pole and he has to time travel to get back to his fam. And it's called Wrapping Christmas Presents. It'll be coming straight to Netflix and it only costs $350 million. I'm all for it. Legend of the Guardians is unbelievably shit. For some reason, every voice actor in it is Australian. Because, you want to make it realistic. And again, it's full of that. I don't even know what type of rock you'd call it. What's Jared Leto's band type of music? Shit?
Like alternative rock?
Alternative to rock. It's fucking rubbish. It's all that sort of whoa stuff. Well, it's all sort of slow drums. It's vomit-inducing shit. I wish Jared Leto in the fucking Ballast Dives Club. I wish that was a documentary. I'm not just because I would have paid him for sex. He's a good-looking tranny, right, Christian?
I've never disagreed on any of your opinions with Jared Leto, so I'm not going to start now.
We now come to the thing which I've never said before, is what April Imholt had to do in prison to avoid getting shanked. Sucker Punch. I'm going to have to go ahead first and say that this is legitimately one of the worst films I've ever seen. To the point that when I first seen it, again, dude bro-tastic. It's basically a montage of music videos cut in with shots of women being beaten or their attempted with a lot of songs, stupid action, and a whole lot of art shots. Here's a good idea. When you're trying to show how disturbing female abuse is, maybe don't cut to a shot of a woman with the really glossy arse in slow-mo. Maybe that's just me. I'm weird that way. Sucker Punch is unbelievably shit, and even better than that, it was a huge flop. It lost money, so surely this would be the end of his career. But no, he went on to keep getting hired, and on top of that, there's an extended director's cut with the newly filmed ending coming. For fuck's sake, what the fuck is going on in the world? Cayley, what did you think of Sucker Punch?
Well, I had every intention of watching it. I made it about 10 minutes in yesterday after watching Rebel Moon and Rebel Moon 2. And then I could not do it anymore. I was like, I literally, I have no interest in watching this. I love my life way too much to suffer through this shit right now. So I turned it off. And I think that I have ever turned off maybe 3 movies in my life. So I think that's indicative of how much I liked it.
Yeah. Like this in a way should be called 300 for the amount of attempted scenes in it. Like it's fucking insane. Like, at what point did the studio read that script and say, what the fuck are you doing? There's 7 in the first scene. You know what I mean? Like, this is fucking, oh my God, it was so shit. Lemmi, what did you think of Sucker Punch, baby, with your big knockers?
I one of the things that I hate in movies is like gratuitous scenes or whatever. But Zack Snyder seems to do it in a classy enough way to not make me uncomfortable. So like I understand that he's like inferring that sexual assault is about to happen, but he doesn't like graphically show it. I liked Sucker Punch when it first came out, but I was in my like early 20s or whatever. I watched it yesterday and I was like, man, this movie sucks. The imaginary scenes went too long. You never got to see that bitch dance. The acting was like showgirls terrible. You know what I mean? And the ending, I actually liked the ending, to be perfectly honest with you. I actually did enjoy the ending because she got lobotomized.
Yeah, but what was the ending?
She got lobotomized. It was all like, none of it was real.
No, it was.
She definitely got lobotomized.
She got lobotomized, and the chick fucking escaped or whatever the fuck. But like, it was a movie based on what she believed was going on in her head. I felt like that was so lazy. It was a movie based on a fantasy a girl escaped, a damaged girl escaped into. That was the whole fucking movie, except collecting a few items to do some shit. Like I couldn't. It was terrible.
I remember watching it in the cinema with the hard on, I'm not going to lie. And that bit where they had to steal something from the chef, like a potato peeler. And the knife, and he catches her, and his immediate reaction to her stealing the knife is, I'm going to on a big pile of fucking potatoes.
Oh, no, that was the chocolate. She was stealing a piece of chocolate.
Oh, well, then she definitely deserved it.
Well, I think that this might be a cultural difference. I'm just assuming in the version released in Ireland, the attempted rape is on a huge pile of potatoes. And if you listen closely, one of those potatoes says, "Oh, hello there." So it's actually kind of a great scene. But I have to agree that visually there's some really pretty stuff in this movie. And I let a friend of my wife saw this before we did and talked about like, oh my God, this movie's so great. And about 20 minutes in, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, this girl's an idiot. Because I feel like this is one of those movies that was designed just to hopefully give unimaginative girls some ideas for Halloween costumes. But then it wasn't successful enough because I believe it came out in the spring. So by then you're like, well, I'm not going to do my Sucker Punch costume. But it's this is probably this is like it checks all the boxes of all the things he does badly. Although I do have to agree with Lemmy, the attempt at a little bit more tasteful in this than in some of his other work.
Yeah, and it does happen many more times. No R, which is a shame because you don't need and all. They're all hers, and they love it. The Sucker Punch was so bad that Quentin Tarantino has on record said that when he stopped making films with Miramax, when he was getting around to making Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he wouldn't have talks with Warner because they made Sucker Punch. It was like, fair enough. And then he forced the auditioning actress to put her foot in his mouth. So obviously, up next, Lemmy wants to make a film about Aaron Eimholt's battle against injustice that he will be called Toe of Steel. But instead, we're going to go with Man of Steel.
I loved this movie. This was my favorite of the Zack Snyder movies. I love the lore. I know, Suey, shut up.
I'm only laughing because the way Husey has his whole face buried in his hand. I'm probably not disagreeing with Lemmy here, but it made me laugh.
I'm not a superhero person. I'm not a comic book person.
That's even worse. You're hurting my feelings.
I'm sorry. This movie was great visually. I love Henry Cavill. The cast was great. I loved the guy who played Zod. You know what I mean? I really, really enjoyed this movie a lot. And I hate okay, I'm sorry. I was about to mix up Batman versus Superman with Man of Steel. I was about to say something about Ben Affleck. But anyway, anywho, I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's a very wholesome family superhero movie. And you get to learn a lot of really cool history about Superman. And as I've stated before, I'm a big lore, historical canon type person. So I really, really enjoyed Man of Steel. I'm sorry.
Christian, what did you think of Man of Steel?
So I think that I agree that some of the visuals are great. I do think Henry Cavill is well cast as Superman, but the fundamental problem with this movie and with Zack Snyder's entire approach to Superman that Richard Donner got in the first 10 minutes is it's a lot about Clark Kent. And Clark Kent is not in this movie very much, and he's not Clark Kenty enough. Christopher Reeve was an amazing Clark Kent and also an excellent Superman. So I think that Henry Cavill's a good Superman, a functional Superman, but he's absolute garbage as Clark Kent, and that's not his fault. It's because the director decided, who cares so much about that? The casting is great, especially, let's all tip our hats to the idea of having the character Perry White being played by a black guy. Come on. Well, Lawrence Fishburne's amazing, but it's like, Perry White, but look at him now. More like Perry Black. Am I right or am I right? Come on. But I think that the biggest problem is the success of Christopher Nolan's Batman movies. And that works for that character. And the idea that you could, we'll do the same thing to Superman. It's like, no. Superman is bright lights and sunshine. And he's a straight up murderer in this movie. And you're trying to be like, well, this isn't your father's Superman. Well, it's like, yeah, but it's not my Superman either. I do think that it has a lot of people who do love comic books. A friend of mine that I do my podcast with regularly, he saw it 8 times in the theater. Shortly thereafter, so it made sense. But in any case, I just don't. I don't understand the absolute hatred for this movie, but I also I can't get how people who like this character and like the genre, oh yeah, this is the best one. And if we're able to peek ahead, if I was to know what was going to come with Zack Snyder and Superman, then it would make my appreciation of this been that much greater, because I think that this should have been where his Superman story ended.
Mm. Cayley, what did you think of Man of Steel?
Well, I liked Henry Cavill. I disagree with
Ooh.
Lemmy. I thought Michael Shannon did horrible in this, and I usually love him. And that was my first indication that I hate this movie and that I think that Zack Snyder is a bad director, because how do you make Michael Shannon not be good? I think that I completely agree that the origin story is really cool. I think seeing Krypton was really cool. I think there were a lot of things that could have been really exciting. And again, it fits into this category of Zack Snyder films where it looks fantastic, but as soon as that gets played out, then I'm left with nothing. I don't feel like the substance was enough for me to be able to enjoy this. I think that it also fits in the category of his, which is that it's a little long, and I don't necessarily think that you need to stretch it out that long.
She's talking about your penis, Christian.
No, I would like that to
Well,
be stretched out longer.
Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
believe me, you and my wife have that in common. You guys can talk about it at Hackmania.
Perfect.
Love it. I absolutely fucking hated Man of Steel so much. This is the equivalent of cinematic Instagram, where I'd hated everything that Zack Snyder had done pretty much for the previous decade. This came out in 2013. But then the trailer came out, and to this day, I think the Man of Steel has the greatest trailer for any film I've ever seen, where I was just like, holy shit, this is going to be really good, like Fast X or something like that. I couldn't.
So that tells me you never saw the trailer for White Chicks.
Okay, you're blocked. You don't tell me about White Chicks. I tell you about White Chicks. And no, first of all, one of the problems I have with the film is the title. I get why it's called Man of Steel. Most Superman fans get why it's called Man of Steel. At no point in the film is he called a Man of Steel. Why couldn't Perry White, the black person, say, what is he made out of steel, this man? We all could have had a good laugh at it. A hilarious joke. And so it sounded like an Asylum reboot of fucking Iron Man. Oh, the Man of Steel. Then on top of that, I hated the part where Superman is randomly working at a truck stop bar for no logical reason, and here comes Dude Bro's favorite Pearl Jam song. I don't know why that happened. And on top of that, Christian mentioned that it was around the same time as the Christopher Nolan series of the Batman trilogy. Well, Christopher Nolan produced this one. And if you go back and watch it, they film it exactly the same way as Man of Steel, sort of the shaky, gritty handheld camera. It's like, yeah, because we want the gritty, realistic tale of a fucking alien from another planet with laser eyes. That old story. And then on top of that, Henry Cavill can't act. His whole acting comes across from doing this. He's got one facial expression. People with Bell's palsy make fun of his lack of facial expressions. And I just thought that this was a fucking disaster. The fact that it wasn't it was a hit, but it wasn't that much of a hit, was shocking. And even worse than that, when the fucking Flash came out last year, the year before, General Zod, Lemmi, comes back in the Flash. So the Flash takes place during Man of Steel. And it's so fucking bad that I would rather have looked at Ezra Miller's Google searches than watch Man of Steel or The Flash. Hated it. And of course, it got the sequel that again we got excited about. Well, say we, I mean me, people, the M-words, the nerds. Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. Christian, what did you think of Batman versus Superman?
Well, I saw this movie in the theater 3 times,
Oh
and
Jesus!
one of which I'm going to name drop. I went with I brought my then not even 1 year old son. I went with my friend who happens to be Amy Adams' sister-in-law. She married her brother, so I was hoping she would pop up. So we watched it with newborns, and I think that they probably got more out of it than I did. I think that the problem with this movie is the title and the build-up, Batman versus Superman. And I remember because I've been podcasting a long time, so I did multiple episodes on this. Batman versus Superman, the actual fight between them lasts for 8 minutes on screen. And then the hokiest moment, possibly in all of film in the 21st century, is the oh my God, wait, your mom has the same name as me? I guess I'm not going to kill you. It is some of the worst storytelling that I've ever seen. But I think that it, I don't know what he was trying to do. It was way too big. I felt like it was also too soon. He should have made another Superman movie, a standalone Superman movie. You're talking about the mixed results. I looked it up. Man of Steel made almost $700 million worldwide, which, in 2016 definitely could have gotten you a second film. But I'm sure the studio was like, yeah, we got to put Batman in this right away. So let's get the guy who couldn't play Daredevil to play Batman in this movie. And I have to disagree on Henry Cavill's acting ability. Clearly, you never saw Man from Uncle. But I think that it's just trying too hard. I think Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor is a choice, but considering that the previous Lex Luthor was Kevin Spacey, we were not going to be scared when we saw him on screen. So there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. This is one of those movies like Star Trek The Motion Picture, where watching the extended version with like an extra 10, 15 minutes made the story make a little bit more sense. But it was so goddamn long that, of course, you had to cut everything out. This is actually okay, I think. And I think that the best part of this was the introduction of Wonder Woman. I think that's the best part in the entire movie, with neither of the title characters. Wonder Woman sneaks in at the end and steals the movie from these two losers.
Cayley, what did you think of Batman versus Superman?
Yeah, I thought this was dumb and convoluted. This is the movie of his where I really started like ODing on the slow-mo, and I was like, dude, fucking stop. Like, it's long enough. We don't need to slow-mo it. I haven't seen this since it came out. My recollection is that Batman is a mass murderer. Is that?
Only of people who deserve it. Yeah.
Okay.
He mass murders bad guys. Yeah.
So I feel like that's just Zack Snyder trying to push the boundaries of like Batman can't kill or he shouldn't kill. And yes, even if it's only of bad guys, that's like not what the canon is, right?
Right, but the studio rejected his preference, which was that he be a serial. And they said, like, all right, how about some killing? And they were, Warner Brothers was like, we love that. But this is the gritty, darker sort of the Dark Knight iteration because he's older and fatter. The Frank Miller miniseries, it's an older Batman. And so that was the whole idea, that this is the Batman who's had it up to here with all this Gotham City bullshit. So yes, he does kill because doing it on the straight and narrow didn't work anymore. He couldn't be the Val Kilmer Batman anymore. He couldn't be the George Clooney Batman anymore. He had to turn into the Geely, the Jersey Girl Batman.
You're making this sound better than it is. Another thing that I really, really remember is that this, and again, you mentioned it also, Christian, when you add in those 10 or 15 additional minutes for the director's cut, maybe some of it makes a little bit more sense. So many of his films, I feel like I get lost in them because they don't make sense. He will he'll create a character in one way, and that character will have all of these characteristics, and then all of a sudden 2 scenes later we're not talking about any of those things anymore, and the person's completely opposite of what they've been set up to be. And I remember that happening a lot in this, which perhaps is why I was so caught up on the fact that Batman was a mass murderer and not a serial.
Which actually would have been kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, just ask 66 Robin whether or not Batman was a serial. And I believe that Dick Grayson would be able to tell you things that would make your ears blush.
You said Dick. Lemmi, what did you think of Batman versus Superman?
I appreciated Batman versus Superman for what I believe that it was originated from, which is a couple of guys getting really stoned in a room and being like, what if like Batman versus Superman, bro? And it was like a passion project that was birthed from that. You know what I mean? Which
so Lemmi, you watched the DVD commentary clearly, so you know how this movie happened.
No. But it just seems that way. But I do, for whatever reason, I hate Ben Affleck, but I really enjoyed him as Batman. And I love Batman. I'm like real picky about my Batmans. I like Michael Keaton Batman, and you can go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? But I actually liked Val Kilmer Batman too, so don't come for me. But whatever. I liked him a little bit. I loved all the Batman movies for what they were. Anywho. But that's just what the whole movie felt like to me. It was a passion project. You know what I mean? The whole making weapons with kryptonite and all that cool shit. It was just, what if this? What would we actually need in real life if this were to come to life? It was that kind of movie.
Well,
a really big budget.
Well, Lemmi, you may enjoy The Flash because Michael Keaton returns as Batman in it.
Okay.
So does Ben Affleck as Batman. And so does another Batman, which I won't tell you because you will have killed yourself before the end of the film, and I want you to stay alive.
George,
I just want to chime into what Lemmi said, and yes, I think that to me, Val Kilmer was actually the best Bruce Wayne that we've ever gotten. I don't buy any of the other guys as Bruce Wayne, but he's this suave. And look, part of it is because I got a bit of a chub watching him in a tuxedo. But I think Val Kilmer portrays Bruce Wayne. I think the worst Bruce Wayne was Christian Bale. I mean, I just looked at him and I'm like, this guy doesn't have anywhere near enough money to be Bruce Wayne. So I think that let's do the all Batman episode, Husey.
No, with Batman versus Superman. Again, I remember getting really hyped up for it. The fact that they were bringing in the trailer, it showed you there's a lot of Justice League stuff. They showed you that hint of Robin's his uniform that had the Joker had written on his where he killed Robin, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we're going somewhere cool here, and that DC has this really cool plan of all these great films to come, and then they cast Bridget Bardot or Gal Gadot or whatever the fuck her name is. I've got a great idea for an action film. Let's cast the lead, this really skinny woman with zero muscle tone in her body. English isn't her first language, and put her in a short skirt with no arse. This is going to be nothing but gold. Everything's going to win. Then we'll get Ben Affleck to put on natural muscle. Everybody knows you can get in that kind of shape in 4 months naturally from eating. We're getting off track here. I just thought that this was stunningly bad. It was actually, and the thing that made it even shocking, the most shocking to me, is that it has literally the word versus in the title. Yes, it has the least action of any superhero film ever made, which is baffling. Why the fuck would you call it that and not have a much more of an extended action scene? Like, shouldn't they be flying through the city, and Batman has all these weapons set up through the city to get Superman out into the open where he's got like a fucking kryptonite force field so that they can actually fist fight with no advantages? And then even worse, and I know this is very important to you, Lemmi, the fact that they put Doomsday in it and they didn't fill in the backstory was extremely problematic to an N-word to a nerd like me. I couldn't believe that they would just let that go. That'd be like going to see fucking Duran, and they open with "Hungry Like the Wolf." You go, no, you're supposed to save that classic to the end. It's like, what if Nickelback opened with "How You Remind Me"? It's like, then what am I paying these $700 for? Even though you've got so many other hits that people can name all day. I hated Batman versus Superman so much, and it was a financial loss. So on top of that, you've now had a series of films that were not profitable. So to show that they learned from it, they fucking kept them on to do the next one, which is the Justice League. Before we get finished, Batman vs Superman has a scene where Batman saves, that's right, a bunch of women who've been held captive as sex slaves. Why? Lemmi?
Because that's canon in Zack Snyder movies across the board.
Across the broad. Am I right, guys?
Ew.
I think Husey was asking, why does Batman have to ruin that guy's good time? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
why rain on his parade? You know, just let bygones be bygones. Let him be.
Yeah, and I love the bit when Bruce Wayne goes to like an illegal fighting ring, gets talking to this gangster guy, puts a tracker on him, and then as the guy's leading him, as he's leading Batman to his lair, Batman just opens up his machine gun and starts shooting at him. It's like, so what, to put the fucking tracker on him for? You're never going to find out where he's going, you dumb if he's dead. Anyway, up next, Christian's personal favorite film of all time, Justice League. When I seen SuckerPunch, I always thought, if only this was 4 hours, 20 minutes long, this would be so much better. And then during the pandemic, if anyone remembers that, he originally, there was a version of Justice League that he didn't come back for reshoots because of the excuse was his stepdaughter had unalived herself, so he was not able to get back to recover, which is weird that she would do that considering how well he treats women throughout his film career. I'm just saying, look into it. So of course Joss Whedon did his version. It was really shit. During the pandemic, we got the vastly extended Snyder cut. And to show that he's intelligent, he fucking had it formatted like an IMAX screen to be watched at home. That makes sense, you fucking idiot. Christian, what did you think of Justice League?
So the Whedon cut, which is what most people saw, is the version that was in theaters. Obviously, a lot of it directed by Zack Snyder, but by the time it's put together, it's actually Joss Whedon's vision. And the thing you can say about the Whedon cut is that it is much shorter. It's about half the runtime of the Snyder cut. And I think that the story is better in the Snyder cut because it's more along the lines of what he wanted to tell. But earlier, Husey, you referenced the fact that Lemmi and I recently did an episode about Caligula. So in Caligula, there's a scene where a number of gentlemen masturbate into a bowl. And I would say that is nowhere near as masturbatory as Zack Snyder's Justice League at 4 hours and I think 2 minutes. There is a close-up of a sesame seed on a hamburger at one point in the Flash sequence, which was not in the original. And this was the dangers of the internet. You had people that wanted to release the Snyder cut. Well, there was no Snyder cut, so they gave them a ton of money so they could put it on their stupid new app, which is now called Max. And it was released theatrically. But I can't imagine sitting through a 4-hour movie without at least 2 intermissions. And this story, whichever version of it you see, has good characters in it. It has your Justice League characters, and it also has Cyborg in it. But it's really, it's just such a bad telling of a story. I mean, I think Jason Momoa as Aquaman is among the better casting from this era of superhero movies. His standalone movie wasn't great, but he's great in it. And obviously, Husey, anyone who's associated with the Fast franchise gets a pass.
Yeah, it was in the good one. But the thing about Jason Momoa is that his version of Aquaman in this is the dude broiest dude bro ever, to the point that, spoiler alert, he kills the villain with the fucking Alien Ant Farm CD. He stinks. And also, I'm not saying that Zack Snyder doesn't do his research, but why does Aquaman have his powers on land? Just saying. Lemmi, what did you think of Justice League?
Justice League was so long that it took me like 3 days to watch this entire film because I could not stop falling asleep. It was the Lord of the Rings effect, and it was one of the two movies. This one and Army of the Dead were two movies that I could not fucking stay awake for. But by the end of it, I was like, cool story. Amber Heard's still a I don't like that bitch, and I didn't enjoy seeing her in a film. I don't want to see her face ever. I thought Jason Momoa as Aquaman was great, but Jason Momoa plays weird characters really well. Like Slumberland, he played excellent. Just a weird dude bro kind of character. I like Jason Momoa for that. He's not Khal Drogo. I get to see this, like, who he is or whatever. I like it.
He's not what?
He's not like a Khal Drogo from where everybody knows him from Game of Thrones, where he's like this fucking badass leader with no personality. He's very silly and like you said, dude bro. I like the dude bro vibes, and he's silly and he doesn't. I don't know. I've always been an Atlantean fan, anywho. But the movie was just so fucking long, and I couldn't stay awake. But again, like I said, by the end of it, I was like, cool story, bro. It could have been way shorter.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Is that Zack Snyder's so intelligent that he released his fucking director's cut, which ends with a cliffhanger. It's like, why would you do that if that's not the ending of the story? Why are we now being teased a sequel that we don't want, but would probably watch anyway because I'm a loser? Cayley, what did you think of Justice League?
I do think that the release the Snyder Cut hashtag is a really important movement. I think that goes to show that Hollywood does sometimes listen to us. And I think that that's really extremely, extremely important. That being said, I never saw the Joss Whedon version. I only have seen the Snyder Cut. And I will say that the character development is great. I think both Lemmi and Christian hit on that. It's interesting. There's a lot of great stuff. But if you can't develop a character in 2 hours, maybe that's because you suck. Like, there are plenty of good movies that are 2 hours long where I get all of this character development and I don't have to look at the sesame seed on the bun. It's possible to create a full, complete story in 2 hours, or even less than that, in an hour and a half. So why is it that everybody is creaming their pants over the Snyder Cut? I mean, if it's better than the Joss Whedon cut, that's great. Maybe that's because Joss Whedon cut out a lot of the character development. I don't care about the character development when it's 4 hours long.
I'm totally with you. This would be my second favorite Zack Snyder film, but that's only because I think it's just shit instead of fucking shit. Like I think of everything else. Hey, it ranges all the way from shit to fucking shit. That's one of my Eddie Murphy impressions. And with this, the only good thing about it was that it came out during the lockdown, and there was only so many times you could whack off to stuff like Cuties where you need more content. And you could just tell that he was thinking, oh, he's like, hey, dude, bro, what about a bunch of Amazonians are on the fucking Batmobile and all this shit? And it was fucking terrible. Pointlessly long. The fact that he had a 4 hour long version in the first place is baffling. Like, did he actually think they were going to release that? And thankfully, they kept the entire prayer scene in from the ocean people, because there's one thing his other films needed was more prayer scenes from start to finish. Zack Snyder's the guy that thought that thing you do Tom Hanks's film didn't have the song played in it enough.
The important thing to keep in mind is that there were supposed to be 2 Justice League films. So there's stuff in either cut where Batman's waking up with this nightmare, seeing something with Apocalypse. That was going to be the second film. But during the first one, they realized, like, they'd gotten the receipts back on Man of Steel, but also Batman vs Superman. So they got, let's just do one and not end it on a cliffhanger. So I think that the cliffhanger in the end of the Snyder Cut is him trying to prove himself. Like, look, I still have a lot of bad stories I can tell and disappoint people with. Can you give me more money? And then the studio said, no. Why don't you go work for Netflix?
Well, Lemmi, if you haven't seen the Joss Whedon version of Justice League, it's quite hilarious because Ben Affleck had relapsed on alcohol during it, and you see how drastically his physical condition changes between scenes, where some scenes he's got a fake beard on. He's doing scenes behind the chair in his bat suit because his fucking junior body is fucking showing so much. It was not a healthy time for the guy who gets to eat Jennifer Lopez's arse. So I had no sympathy
not anymore.
for him.
They're getting divorced.
Oh, he'll still do it. She's a her.
True.
Of course, as Christian mentioned, that was the end of Zack Snyder's cinematic run. Oh. Then he moved into the world of streaming. Thank God, because that means no more restrictions for Zack Snyder. He can finally be the filmmaker that we all know he can be. The sequel, or the follow-up to the one Zack Snyder film I like, Dawn of the Dead, Army of the Dead. Lemmi, what did you think of Army of the Dead?
I've been trying to watch Army of the Dead for the last 6 months, actually. And I can't stay awake through it. It's essentially Rebel Moon, a ragtag team of damaged fucking losers trying to create an army, But I mean, whatever, dude. I couldn't. I couldn't.
Yeah. Cayley, I know you were telling me before we recorded about how much you love Army of the Dead. What did you think of Army of the Dead?
Oh yeah, it's my favorite. It sounds so cool. It was set in Las Vegas, a heist movie with zombies. It sounds like it's gonna be the most badass thing. Dave Bautista, like, ooh, crazy times. It's gonna be great. It is so stupid. I went into this movie, I watched it when it came out, at home, and I couldn't believe how bad it was. I completely understand what Lemmi says when she's saying that she was falling asleep during it. And I think that this is when you see this a lot with Zack Snyder films, but it's harder to talk about because so much of what he does is superhero films. Very frequently, his heroes have no redeeming qualities. They're just a bunch of unlikable assholes. And I think that you really, really see that in Army of the Dead. You get a little bit of Dave Bautista's character has like some like story arc and is sweet and, blah, blah, blah. But dude, cut all that out. Give me the 1.5 hour version that's less boring. I don't know. Give me the not Zack Snyder cut. Release the not Zack Snyder cut.
Thankfully, this one stars Tig Notaro, the woman that looks exactly like Ray DeVito. Christian, what did you think of Army of the Dead?
Well, a couple things that I think that Dave Bautista's character development shows what a sympathetic character is, because he had to put a bullet through his wife's head. So obviously that shows that he's an American hero, the hero we need and the hero we deserve. Also, reading about this movie, which I only just saw this week, Tig Notaro is only in this movie is because that character was originally played by Chris D'Elia. and they went in. So I knew watching this that they had green screened her in. There are definitely scenes where you can see her face is really blurry, and I guess the effects didn't finish rendering before they uploaded it to Netflix. And I think that she is probably if you need to get a lesbian who can replace Crystalia, Tig Notaro is probably your choice. And I just assume it was a similar body type. The thing that's going to surprise all of you is that I said at the beginning of this episode that I hate zombie movies. I loved this movie because they took the awful, tiresome zombie story and they're like, well, let's put a Vegas heist in the middle of it. And I was like, okay, it's too long. But when I'm like, oh, wait, that's what this is? I thought it was just like going to be a getting out of Las Vegas movie. And you notice, by the way, as long as this movie was, there's like a montage at the beginning that seems like a whole other movie. You know, there's like a little girl finds some female character, and in the end, they both get surrounded by zombies. And I'm like, I feel like this was another one where he had two movies planned. And they're just like, let's just fast forward through it and get to Bautista, whose shirt is never off in this movie, unless I'm wrong, Husey, which that's what I like about the Guardians movies is that Bautista never has his shirt on, but the characters are very unlikable. The story is it feels more like a comic book movie than his actual comic book movies. So the ending is very stupid, where like the guy gets out of the bank vault and I guess the point is like the zombies have evolved so that they just look like regular people, and then they can infect the masses the old-fashioned way by just not wearing a rubber. So I'm not really sure what he has planned for more. I would not want to see a follow-up, but despite the length, I enjoyed myself, which is what she said.
I liked, what was the prequel? Something with thieves. Army of Thieves?
Army of Thieves.
Yeah, that was, I really enjoyed that, but that was not directed by Snyder.
Right.
Which is why I enjoyed it.
That's a great point.
The sole positive that I have about Army of the Dead is that when it was released in Netflix, it was the day before restrictions over here started being lifted. So I remember watching it thinking, just another minute gone and I'm going to be able to go to the pub. It's just going to be great. And by the way, for the record, the next day I went out and I get completely I'm halted. I was destroyed. I remember this film, thank you, Lemmi. When this came out, it had this bizarre, what's the term, cinematography? Where it was like the center of the screen was in focus, but the rim of the thing was like blurred like that.
Yeah, the depth of field stuff that he likes to do.
Yeah, that was so fucking weird.
He just really wanted to be sure you didn't see Crystalia. I think that's why there's so much blurriness in this.
They also did that thing where it was extremely unoriginal, where you could tell, right, he's lifted this from this scene, that from that scene. What's the Leonardo DiCaprio film, The Irrelevant, or where he's
Inception?
Where he's stuck out in the snow.
The Bear?
Yeah.
Revenant?
The Revenant. Sorry, it's not called The Bear. The Revenant. Yeah.
The Revenant. That bit where the bear attacks Leonardo DiCaprio and him happens again in Army of the Dead when a guy is attacked by a zombie tiger. Almost exactly. Like, it's unbelievable how unoriginal. And back to the zombie king kidnaps human women and keeps them as slaves so that he can impregnate them and have born zombies, because that's always fun in a zombie film. And I just thought it was unbelievably bad. The idea, I have to admit, I liked it because it was like a heist film set during a zombie. It's like, that's not bad. And Jesus Christ, it was bad. Little did we know that Zack Snyder and Netflix, it was to get even worse. My God. Rebel Moon Part 1. I just gotta go ahead and say this. This is like going to see a tribute band who refused to admit that any of the songs they're playing or covers. It was basically like watching a YouTube super edit of other songs, of other scenes from previous films. I was amazed at how bad it was. Charlie Hunnam's in it. I think he's a I hate him so much. Never liked him. Christian, what did you think of Rebel Moon Part 1?
Well, the thing that struck me immediately as I was watching the story be told, was that I haven't seen as blatant of a Star Wars ripoff since The Last Jedi. So it had been a moment since I had seen someone that doesn't understand Star Wars trying to tell a Star Wars story, because there's an evil empire. There's a desert planet. There's fucking laser swords. It takes a while till you get them. And that's when I was like, that cinched it. And to your point, Husey, it's a perfect allegory. It is the tribute band doing all Kiss songs, and they're saying, no, these are originals. Well, you're wearing the makeup. No. I came up with this makeup too, and all of this. And I couldn't believe that this was broken up into two movies. The thing that I'll say about the second one is at least it was shorter. But this first one was 2 hours and 16 minutes. And Lemmi, I did have trouble staying awake during both of these. I did watch them both over a couple of nights. So, Husey, you've really ruined my week getting ready for this. And the casting is fairly dreadful in this movie. Usually he has an eye for talent, at least for a couple of actors. I don't know if anybody's good in this except maybe Anthony Hopkins as the voice of the robot. But even that, he probably literally phoned it in, and that's why he said yes.
Can I do my Anthony Hopkins impression?
Please.
Where he goes, I'll do the film as long as the offer is over £1 million. Because that's because he was in Transformers 5.
Yes.
The worst trans since Night Melendez. Lemmi, what did you think of Rebel Moon Part 1?
All right, I'm going to go on record to say I hated both of these movies, but I will be watching the third one when it comes out because I am invested. Okay? I'm already invested. I was interested enough to be invested enough to want to see the third one when it comes out. I hated this movie and I was out of it. I couldn't pay attention to it until I learned that both of the Dario Naharises, the cast for Dario Naharis from Game of Thrones was the bad guy, Noble from Rebel Moon, and also the farmer was recast as Dario Naharis when the first guy left. He was replaced. So both dudes playing the same character were in the same movie interacting with each other. And then I was like, okay, I'm paying it. You have my full attention. So I was like, I put the hatred aside and I tried to enjoy the story for what it was. It was absolutely Star Wars. It was a blatant ripoff of Star Wars. Nobody got a fucking shot off. For every 100 shots shot, one person got hit maybe in the shoulder. And they're the coolest fucking weapons, dude. Cool weapons. There was a bar scene. It was Star Wars. It was Star Wars. However, I really did enjoy the storyline. Her storyline, the adopted princess of a fucking military, like industrial, whatever the fuck. I really did enjoy I hate to say it, but I loved these movies. But the one thing I came out of both of these movies thinking was you could erase all of the dialogue and it still would have been a really, really good movie. It could have been a silent film with the graphics and the fucking CGI and all of the scenes or whatever, and it would have been inferred, and it still would have been. Would
it have been a better video game, maybe, Lemmi?
Yes, it would have been a fucking awesome video game.
Yeah. Well, it was a video game. It was called Star Wars, the video game.
Mass Effect.
You don't need to swear. Cayley, what did you think of Rebel Moon Part 1?
That's a really good point that you guys just brought up. I think that the idea of this being a video game probably would have made it more likable. And same kind of issue that he had with Watchmen. Watchmen worked as a graphic novel. It did not necessarily translate to film. Perhaps we should stop being so ambitious, Zack Snyder. I hated it. I didn't care about a single character. The dialogue was fucking awful. I did enjoy the sexy tamer guy on the crow dragon thing. That was like the only part that I really tuned into. That scene could have gone on a little bit longer for me, but other than that, ugh.
Did you make your own Zack Snyder slow-mo while you were watching it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, well, I fucking hated this. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of conversations about wheat, but even at that, I thought that was too much in this film. I just thought that I couldn't believe how unoriginal it was. Even that bit with the giant spider, we've seen that in the Hobbit films, and this is again, instead of him dude broing it up while looking at his iTunes, he was dude broing it up while looking at his Blu-ray collection. I like to think he's old school, and I just fucking hated it. And this, if I didn't get Netflix for free, I would not maintain my subscription because it's all shit on there. Like they aren't making anything good. Streaming is bollocks. Roadhouse was rubbish. This is shit. Unfrosted was fucking horrific, starring Jerry Seinfeld, even though Amy Schumer was in it, playing someone that was obsessed by sugary food, which was a stretch for her. Hated Rebel Moon. And I gotta say, one bit that always stuck out to me was what's the female lead, Sophia Boella, whatever the fuck her name is. There's a bit where somebody's asking her backstory. So then she begins to speak where she's like, I was born on a rebel moon, and she's talking like Aaron Imholt describing his outrage at the fucking drug stuff. It's like, you want to go, who are you talking to? We're sitting around the campfire, and suddenly this goes, well, it's funny, Lemmi. I went to the shop the other day and I bought a lawnmower. There were no lawnmowers other like that. And I was like, well, could you calm down, please? The fucking Miller Lite's gone to your head. Hated Rebel Moon so much.
Will you be watching the third one?
I will be watching the director's cut when it comes out because I don't do April Imholt anymore. So I need some type of punishment so that I can spend the rest of the week going, what the fuck am I doing? Wasting my money on nose beer.
How much of your disappointment was the fact that the only was an attempted and broken up fairly quickly?
That's right. Another, we get right back into the let these bitches, which I think is what the director's cut's going to be called. Now we get into quite possibly the worst film he's ever made so far, Rebel Moon Part 2. Lemmi, you're clearly drunk and you're getting angry. I cannot wait to hear what you think of Rebel Moon Part 2.
By the time I started watching Rebel Moon 2, I had already become invested. So I actually enjoyed watching Rebel Moon 2. I'm aware that it probably sucks just as much as the first one, but I really did enjoy watching it. I'm a sucker for a let's defend our planet story. You know, that's probably why I liked Avatar 2 so much. You know what I mean? I'm a sucker for that kind of story.
Because Avatar 2 was amazing. That's why. You have taste.
That's fair.
Christian, what did you think of Rebel Moon Part 2?
Well, what I appreciated was how many times we got backstory for the different characters, because as I mentioned, I did fall asleep a few times. And when I'd wake up, we would be coming out of the flashback. And I'm like, all right, I don't think I have to rewind here. And when the movie was over, I was like, no, I didn't. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than characters you don't care about than finding out their motivation for why they are the way they are. And I don't think that the villain was so great in the first one, and I refuse to learn his name, that they needed to resurrect him for the second one. They could have had the guy with the beard who, looks like the co-host of Tool Time on the Tim Allen sitcom, the guy with the beard. we could have just had that. That could have been the new bad guy. And the idea that the princess is alive for part 3. I'm going to let Lemmi see part 3 before me, and I'll see what she has to say. I can't imagine spending 2 more hours in this universe, in this world. Visually, there are a lot of cool explosions. And I like anytime when characters are falling for a very long time and they're able to fight. Like in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3, aka the good one, when Tobey Maguire and Topher Grace are falling for a very long time and able to get a lot of punches in on each other. So I like long falling fight scenes, and this film delivered. And uncharismatic robots that I don't care about, possibly being more involved. You said that this is his worst film to date, Husey. And I think it's because he's yet to show us Rebel Moon Part 3. So he's going to ask you to hold his beer, and he knows you'll drink it while you're holding it, but that's fine. He wants you to hold his beer.
Cayley, we know how much you love this saga. What did you think of Rebel Moon Part 2?
Yeah, Rebel Moon Part 2 was the only thing that could have possibly been worse than Rebel Moon Part 1. Christian mentioned the recaps that we get, which again, it's helpful because you zone out a lot during Part 1 because it's so stupid and you don't want to pay attention. But what I had a problem with the recaps is that it leaves out all the parts where the characters are acting like dipshits from the first one. So it's like, it's already trying to rewrite the first movie. He knew already that the first movie fucking sucked and that his characters were unlikable and that the dialogue was awful and that everything was stupid as shit. And so he tried to write that out of the second one. And it's stupid. And we didn't mention, with all the fucking references to all the other movies, the Star Wars, they have the lightsabers, except this time the heroes have red lightsabers.
Yeah.
And the villains have blue lightsabers.
I like audibly, oh my God. When I saw the red lightsabers, I was like, come on, man. She was cool though. I like
it's embarrassing. This is an embarrassing. It's like cringe. I sit there and I'm like, oh buddy, you tried so hard, but stop. Like, don't do it anymore for me.
You know you have a bad film when the main action sequence you're stealing from comes from Black Widow, the Scarlett Johansson Oscar-winning classic. This was fucking terrible. Although I meant to ask at the start, out of the 4 montages of wheat farming, which one was your favorite? I personally liked the 4th. Lemmi?
I liked the one I think it was at the very end of the first one where Jimmy was standing in front of an entire field of wheat. That was my favorite.
That was a good wheat scene. Christian, favorite wheat piece?
The more wheat, the better. And the thing I'd have to say is the first wheat montage, because I wish I could enjoy it for the first time all over again. But, it was, you never forget your first time, Husey.
Yeah. Cayley, you love wheat so much. Did you follow Will Wheaton on Twitter? What was your favorite wheat montage of the saga?
I couldn't tell you which one it was, but it was the slow-mo one, that's for sure. The slow-mo with the scythe,
Yeah, that's some high-quality wheat. That's good shit. I have to say, though, I was blown away by the twist that nobody seen coming, where the peaceful robot that used to be a war robot suddenly got involved in the war at the end to save the heroes. When I watched that, I watched all films while standing up. And I was so shocked that I dropped my glass of milk in slow-mo. I was just like, it happened. And it was amazing. Good news for you. This apparently did not get a great reaction on Netflix. So the idea of there being 6 Rebel Moon films, 6, is potentially not going to happen because they cost so much money. And also because Zack Snyder is a fucking so yeah, I didn't like this one. If you get what I'm saying, you're really drunk, Lemmi.
Yeah,
so I do think we're getting 4 though. He did think that maybe it would be 6, depending which stories he could break up. I think they'll definitely give him one more, and it seems like Netflix is like, sure, why don't you make two more? But it is I don't usually trust like the Rotten Tomatoes and all that, but these are some of the lowest rated films of any films that are in those archives.
But the thing that's so insane is that he also has two director's cuts coming for each of the fucking Rebel Moon. Just like, so why not just release them that way? It's not like a deal with censorship. Netflix released Cuties. You don't need to have a director's cut. And although I would like to watch Cuties again, with Aaron Imholt, he has free time recently. There's no point in doing a verdict. Zack Snyder sucks. I genuinely think he is the worst filmmaker alive today. People say Michael Bay, but if you didn't like Ambulance with Jake Gyllenhaal and a black person, because I'm not racist, I could see that he was black. I thought Ambulance was great. I like that, and I like the first Bad Boys. So that's two. So that means Michael Bay is better than Zack Snyder. Lemmi, if you had a least favorite out of all of these, what would be your least favorite Zack Snyder? And what is your favorite? And can I have some nudes?
I think my least favorite would be Army of the Dead. I couldn't get through it. It's the only one I couldn't literally stay the fuck awake for. And when I started watching that movie 3 days ago, I had realized that I had tried to watch this movie for about 3 weeks, about 6 months ago, because I would just fall asleep every single time. And I wanted to watch it because I liked Batista. I liked Guardians of the Galaxy. But my favorite one was probably Rebel Moon 2. I hate myself.
What a fucking whore. Christian, what is your favorite and least favorite of the Snyderverse?
Definitely Sucker Punch is my least favorite. It's anytime where storytelling gets possibly undone by a dream sequence or a lobotomy, I was like, well, then why did you waste my time if the story didn't actually happen? And it's not easy to pick which one of these is the best. But I think that I'm going to go with Watchmen for the simple fact that he hadn't disappointed me so many times by the time I saw Watchmen. So and I think it's his best superhero movie, and it's definitely not anything in the last 15 years.
Cayley, what about your two big two?
Rebel Moon 2 is definitely the worst. But that's because I haven't seen Sucker Punch. So, there's always time for a worse one.
Sucker Punch could potentially be a topic for an upcoming Once Over with Cayley. Cayley, what plugs do you have for the boys and girls and the dude bros?
Yes, you can always check out my movie reviews at Once Over with Cayley, which is Cayley, where I do movie reviews, a little bit of everything. You can also check me out on Wednesday nights on Who Are These Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And I will be in Vegas very soon. So if you're in Vegas, definitely come and say hello to me for Hackamania. Hackamania.com. Use promo code WATP for 20% off. And also my Patreon, Once Over with Cayley, where I just recently had to review the Stuttering Johnson, a dildo with Stuttering John's face on it.
Yes, and speaking of sex toys, and let me just before you fall asleep, what plugs do you have for the dude bros and the hot that we have in the Snyderverse?
Well, specifically to the you can catch me on BYB Podcast, BYB_podcast on YouTube. And I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Little Lemmi.
Which will, of course, all be linked down below. And you don't do a good enough job promoting that, I have to say, because basically what it is it's like old school not talk radio, music request shows like TLR, or what the MTV thing, TRL.
TRL, yeah.
Like TRL and old radio shows where you request a song, Lemmi plays it, she's high as a kite. It's wonderful, and sometimes she shows off one of her 3 knockers, boys. Christian, what plugs do you have for the dude bros? Because
Well,
the Hooters won't be listening anymore.
the Dude Bros will definitely enjoy Who Are These Broadcasters Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. It is also available as an audio podcast wherever you find podcasts. So please find it that way. I've talked to people who enjoy it as an audio podcast, even though we play a lot of videos. But other than Blind Mike, I think people do enjoy it. As we mentioned multiple times, the most recent episode, as we're recording this, of my podcast, the BladtCast, Lemmi and I talk about Caligula, and we talk about some other films towards the end. But Caligula was really the fun one, and we do have a lot of movie content over there. I believe that Doug from Good Times, Great Movies and I will be talking about RoboCop in the very near future.
Ooh.
So look over there. And to plug my episode of Once Over with Cayley, we talked about Train Spotting.
Yes.
That episode happened to be released right during the stretch when you weren't on WATP regularly. So now
It's
I feel
true.
like no one's ever going to know that it happened. It's the episode that's a tree that fell in the woods.
Just like when Trainspotting 2 came out, it's really good, and not that many people went to see it, sadly.
I really enjoyed Train Spotting 2, and I'm trying to encourage Cayley to watch it so we can do a sequel to our episode that no one watched.
Well, I gotta be honest with you, Trainspotting 2 is better. So there
Better
you go.
than Train Spotting 1.
No, so better than Sucker Punch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But not as good as Rebel Moon Part 17. I drank 3 pints of Guinness during the recording of this. I've also had some water. I've actually need to go to the toilet so badly that I have a piss boner. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Everybody's links will be down below. It's starting to move. I really have to run. Thanks everybody for coming on. This was a good app. Zack Snyder sucks, and I will watch whatever he does next. So I'm going to end the thing now, and I will thank everybody, and I will speak to you all very soon.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.